is dogfighting. And within recent years, this has been brought to the public attention, most notably through the Michael Vick case. So the actual fighting of dogs probably dates back to around the early domestication of dogs, but the specific practice of breeding dogs for fighting dates back to the 1800s. What dogs were selected for was a trait called gameness, or the willingness to continue despite being severely fatigued or incredibly injured. Dogs were also specifically bred not to be aggressive to humans, because humans would be in the ring with these dogs while they were fighting. If a dog posed any sort of threat to his handler in the ring, that dog would be eliminated from the population. Now, traditionally, the fight itself would take place in about a 16 to 16 foot ring with about a 2 to 3 foot high barrier. In the ring would be the two dogs fighting of the same gender and weight as previously agreed upon with their handlers and a referee. At the start of the match, the handlers would have their dogs restrained in opposite corners, and at the call of the referee would release their dogs to meet head-on to fight until one dog showed some sign of being unsure about his willingness to continue. This would be anything from turning his head to tucking his tail to actually fleeing. When this happened, the referee would call a turn on the unsure dog. Both handlers would grab their dogs, return to their respective corners, and the dog on whom the turn was called, the unsure dog, would then have an opportunity to be released and cross a line in his corner, this is called a scratch, to go and attack the opponent dog. Failure to scratch within 10 seconds, or if the dog was unable to continue, would end the match. Traditionally, fights were not fought to the death, and a dog actually dying in the ring was frowned upon. Now, today the scope of dog fighting is really widespread. It's estimated that around 40,000 people within the United States participate in the so-called sport of dog fighting. It's surprisingly easy to go online and find websites that have descriptions of fights, list genealogies of game dogs, or breeders that advertise the use of well-known fighting bloodlines in their dogs, like Razor's Edge. Additionally, Android has recently released an application for their phone called Dog Wars, which is essentially a dog fighting video game. So, dogfighting can also be broken into 3 levels today. And the lowest of these levels would be the street level. This is just 2 people walking down the street decide that they want to fight their dogs. It can happen on the sidewalk or in the bed of a truck, but it's usually spontaneous and typically encompasses the young adults to adolescents. Now, the next level up would be the hobbyist level. These people do invest some time and money into the training of their dogs, and the fights that they participate in are usually planned and adhere to some set of rules, but they have other jobs, and this is just a pastime for them, or they could be trying to work up to the professional level. Now, at the professional level, the highest level, for these people, dogfighting is their life. This is how they make their money. The fights that they participate in are always planned and typically have high wagers. They usually keep a large number of dogs and also partake in the breeding and selling of their dogs, which generates an additional source of revenue for them. So, if you were to go to a site that was used for dogfighting, some of the things that you might find include hanging weighing scales to weigh the dogs before the fight, wash tubs, pieces of the pit itself, a large number of veterinary supplies, more so than the average person would ever have, an object called a breakstick, which is pictured here, and it goes in the dog's mouth and is used to pry him off of another dog if need be. Some of the training equipment you might find include a spring pole, pictured here, heavy chains, treadmills. They can be crafted like the one in the picture or just modified store-bought human treadmills, a jenny, which is an additional device that can be used for endurance training, or kiddie pools if the dog participates in any sort of aquatic training. Now, most people have an image in their head of who's out there fighting these dogs, but research has shown that it's not age, gender, race, or even socioeconomic specific. It might surprise you that this includes Little League coaches, teachers, lawyers, doctors, football players, and even veterinarians and veterinary technicians have been involved with dogfighting cases. It should also be noted that the people who participate in dogfights are usually linked to other illegal activity, and this can be anything from illegal drug use to murder to child abuse. So, as for the dogs involved, most commonly would be the American Pit Bull Terrier, the American Staffordshire Terrier, or mixes thereof, but there's a large number of other breeds that have been used for fighting, or mixes of these breeds, and they include the Bull Terrier, American Bulldog, Boxer, and Press Canario.
It's not uncommon for some of these fighting dogs to turn up at shelters or to be brought into a clinic for more serious wounds, either by the fighter or more commonly by an associate of the fighter. So it's important to be able to identify and distinguish between a fighting dog and a dog that just happened to be in a fight. Fighting dogs tend to have more serious injuries than an accidental or a predatory dog fight. because they're trained to fight until the match is called, whereas in predatory fights, one dog will usually submit to the other. Wounds for fighting dogs tend to be punctate due to penetration by the canine teeth, and they're usually clustered around the head, neck, chest, and forearms because these dogs fight head to head. In predatory fights, this isn't really the case, and wounds can be widespread and can also be on the hind legs, back, or abdomen. There's usually multiple injuries at different stages of healing, and injuries are almost always inconsistent with the owner's description. There are usually discrepancies with the dog's history, and there can be signs of steroid use as well. Veterinarians play a crucial role in stopping dog fighting, helping the victims, and ensuring that the perpetrators go to trial. One of the most important things that vets can do is to report any suspicions of dog fighting. Many vets will not do this for fear of legal ramifications, losing a client, or falsely accusing someone, but it is vital to the cause that veterinarians do report. And because of this, many states have adopted the AVMA's Model Veterinary Practice Act, and that states that veterinarians shall be immune from liability for reporting even suspected incidents of animal abuse, which dog fighting does fall under. You should also know whether you're legally obligated to report these incidents in your state. For example, in Florida, veterinarians do have immunity under the previously mentioned act, but we are not legally required to report. You should also know who to call, whether it be an animal shelter, the police department, or a humane society, and establish a contact beforehand. It's also very important to be able to identify and age injuries. You should also know what fighting paraphernalia is and how it's used. And you should also be able to be familiar with the breeding, the training, and the fighting of these dogs. A lot of fighters will have first aid kits because they do try to self-medicate and sometimes suture their own wounds or things like that. So you should know what medications are commonly used by fighters, what they're used for, which ones are performance enhancing, and which ones are controlled substances. Fighters may also have shock or suture kits. It's important that you recognize, document, and interpret evidence both on the animal and at the scene. And forensic examinations are a very valuable tool, and you should know how to perform these on both live and deceased animals in case you're called to provide testimony in court.